Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mariana Trinos, and I will be your moderator for this session. I'm here to support both you and your presenters, so if you have any questions or need help with the Zoom interface, you can use the chat icon at the bottom of your screen. Find my name and send a message directly to me. I will do my best to help you resolve your concern. And so for this session, the title of the session is United Negro College Fund, College Affordability and Opportunities for our Students of Colors. So here is your presenter, Mary Williams and Sekou Biddle.
Thank you so much. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mary Williams, and I am the Director of Outreach and Recruitment at the United Negro College Fund. And my colleague, Sekou Biddle.
Yep. Sekou Biddle, I'm Vice President of Advocacy and Programs at UNCF.
Great, I'm glad you were able to join us today. As we go through the presentation, if you have questions, please enter them in the chat, as we're going to leave time to answer whatever questions that you may have. So an overview of today's session includes a discussion around scholarships, HBCUs, and resources. And then we're going to talk about UNCF's K-12 work and a HBCU resource guide that we'll be able to share with you. So the learning outcomes for this session include identifying scholarship opportunities for students, providing students with tips to successfully complete scholarship applications, and we want to make sure that we share tools for students and counselors about historically Black colleges and universities. So my colleague Sekou is going to begin the presentation.
Thanks, Mary. So we wanted to start off by telling you a little about ourselves, what we do at UNCF, and giving you a little bit of landscape about the HBCU universe. So as you can see here, your UNCF mission is pretty focused on the access to college for all young people. And obviously we've been doing this work now for 76 years. We're founded in 1944. Principally, we were created to support a network of private historically Black colleges. And we have worked relentlessly to both make college affordable, accessible, and then also to advocate for young people to consider and engage in college going, and in particular, young people of color, but also around the policies that make college more available and accessible to young people in our country today. As I mentioned earlier, UNCF has been doing this work for 76 years. And so we have done a bunch, and obviously this lays out for you the amount of money we've raised over the last 8 decades, both to support our colleges and universities, which is what we were founded to do and what we initially did. And then in the last 50 years, we've really spent a lot of energy and a lot of resources into scholarships and making college more affordable for students. So, we started with just our focus on our 37 member colleges. We have expanded our work so that we now support students attending about 1,100 colleges and universities around the country. We still provide direct support to our member colleges and universities, but we also support students who are awarded scholarships from us to attend anywhere around 1,000 annually, but this year is about 1,100 different colleges and universities around the country. And we're obviously significant advocates for the value of college going and the supports and removal of obstacles that help African-American students attain a college education. And part of that is driven by what we've learned, and you'll see later on in this conversation about the college going ambitions in the African-American community. And you can see here the amount that we've administered in scholarships through about 400 different scholarship and internship programs. And Mary's going to talk a little bit more about some of those later on, but we have a diverse portfolio of scholarships for students attending all sorts of college programs. This is just a sort of quick snapshot on all the places we're present. You can see we're supporting students from every state in the country and several of the territories. You can see our geographic footprint of our member institutions are principally in the southern and southeast region of the United States. We do have Wilberforce University, one of our member colleges in Ohio, which is the furthest north of the schools in our network. There are obviously HBCUs around the country, but our member schools make up the 37 that you can see in the pins here. And then we have offices around the country. And so for the purposes of this group and conversation, we have offices in both San Francisco and Los Angeles that provide outreach and support to students and communities throughout California and the western region of the country. So what is an HBCU? We get this question often, so I just wanted to put this here to give everyone sort of a common fact base. So the HBCU designation is actually determined by the Department of Education. And so the basic criteria that exists there are schools that were founded before 1964, and missions were principally around supporting African-American students. So there are a lot of colleges that people think of similar to HBCUs. We call them predominantly Black colleges, and PBIs, predominantly Black institutions. So there are institutions that have high percentage of minority students and African-American students that are not HBCUs because they were not formed before 1964 and not received this designation from the Department of Education. And we actually now, in some of our programmatic work, support several predominantly Black colleges and universities because they are mission oriented and aligned to the work that we do and the students that we are supporting. And there's a rich history of HBCUs supporting students and really delivering outsized outcomes for students. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later in this conversation. Yeah, so why an HBCU? So actually, I guess I should start actually with full disclosure. I'm an HBCU graduate myself. I graduated from Morehouse College and am the son of people who went to HBCUs. My father went to Central State and my mother started her college at Dillard University in New Orleans. But one of the things that we know to be true, both anecdotally and then a building body of research suggests this, is that HBCUs have had a profound impact in supporting the career success of African Americans, and as well as the degree to which they feel supported or engaged in their communities. And I think this research done by Galvin USA Fund several years ago was really important. The highlight and headline to me here really is that what they found in studying at scale college graduates and those who had attended HBCUs and those who had not, Black college graduates, that the Black college graduates that went to HBCUs, earned more money and had, both stronger sense of self and were doing better financially and had higher rates of engagement in their community. And, I sort of overly simplify this when I talk to my friends about this. When we talk about the case for college going, and data suggests that Black students who go to HBCUs end up being happier and earning more money, I think the case is pretty straightforward and clear. And we have got to really help more young people and the people that are supporting them understand that, so that we can then problem solve around some of the barriers to access for young people around attending HBCUs. And that said, I'll also put out there that it is important for every young person to make a decision about their college going that is absolutely right for them. And, for any of you who have children, I have two and I have one that's in college right now. Every young person is different. And so the decisions they should be making really have to be focused on the right fit and opportunity for themselves. But obviously we feel strongly that at sort of population size and scale, we see that HBCUs do a significant amount of added value for African-American students.
So, I'm glad that we shared the information about why HBCUs, because we get that question often. And as you are engaging with your students and they ask you that question, this gives you some background research to be able to share with them. And additionally, on our UNCF website, there is more materials about HBCUs and why HBCUs. So we invite you to visit our uncf.org website as well. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the scholarships offered by UNCF. Sekou mentioned that we offer 400 programs. They include scholarships, internships, and fellowships. For the high school students, their scholarships. And UNCF is second only to the federal government in providing scholarships to students of color with financial need. Now, I always pause after that because that's big. And that tells you that you want your students to be connected to us as a resource. And how do you connect with UNCF and apply for scholarships? It's really a 3-step process. Individuals will log on to uncf.org/scholarships. Then they will register and create a profile. And the reason that you want your students to register is because this allows UNCF to push out scholarship information to them as it becomes available. We always encourage students to check the site on an ongoing basis as well. And then they can create a profile. So when a student creates a profile, we use that to identify what scholarships that they may be eligible for. And the profile is asking them for demographic information, the schools that they're considering, the major that they're considering, because our scholarships vary based on majors. Some are based on geography. Some have no majors, just based on GPA. And then once a student registers and creates a profile, they can search and apply for opportunities that they're eligible for. But again, the key is to have them register so that we can reach out to them as soon as opportunities become available. So the general criteria for our UNCF scholarships are as follows. Students need to have a minimum GPA of 2.5. Now, that's across the board for most of our scholarships. Now, the scholarships may vary. Some scholarships have different GPA requirements. And there are times that we have emergency funds that are offered to those attending our UNCF schools, and the GPA may be lower for those particular opportunities. Students must have unmet financial need as verified by the financial aid officer. So let me give you an example. If it costs $30,000 to attend a university, and the student has an estimated family contribution of $5,000, that leaves them an unmet need of $25,000. And let's say they have other scholarships to the tune of $5,000, just to make the math easy for me. That leaves an unmet need of $20,000 in this example. And on the student's financial aid award letter, let's say they receive another $10,000 in loans. Their unmet need would still be $20,000. So that just gives you an example of how we identify unmet need. And I wanted to highlight that because there's a difference, as you know, between being Pell eligible and having unmet need. And so the majority of our scholarships are focused on unmet need. Now, we do ask that students complete the FAFSA, free application for student aid, and to do so on an annual basis. This allows us to receive the information for the expected family contribution. We do have some scholarships that are also merit scholarships. So at UNCF, we have both merit scholarships and need-based scholarships. To be eligible, students must be enrolled full-time, or as high school seniors, be enrolling in an accredited college or university. So you notice I said in an accredited college or university. We talked at the beginning about the fact that we support our 37 member institutions, and you saw those on the screen. But remember that individuals who are applying for opportunities at UNCF, we have opportunities for students attending a host of colleges across the country. That's a question we typically get. Even though we walk through the process, they'll say, do you only use your scholarships for HBCUs? No. Students can apply for scholarships and use it at any accredited college or university. Now, again, the criteria for each scholarship will vary. So let me talk about some tips for a winning application. And if you're looking at this list, you're probably saying, well, this is very basic. why are you talking about these basic tips? But I will share with you from experience that these are the key things that students may miss. So I wanted to highlight them so that you can, in turn, share those with your students. First, they want to apply for the opportunities where they meet the basic eligibility criteria. We have merit-based scholarships and we have need-based scholarships. And I share the definition of need-based. So don't let a student take themselves out of the running by not applying for opportunity, thinking they will not get it. They should apply for everything they meet the eligibility criteria for. Some, again, are based on geography. We've had some scholarships that were students who are from the state of California. Some are merit-based. Some of our scholarships are based on no majors. Some are focused on majors, and the majors vary from STEM to business to culinary. So there are a variety of scholarships available on UNCF. If you were to look at our site now, you may see about 29. But if you check again in a few weeks, you're going to see additional scholarships. Now, for high school seniors, the bulk of our scholarships will be posted starting January. Although in December, late November, December, you may start seeing some for high school seniors. Now, if you look at our site, the majority or all of the scholarships are for college students through doctoral students. And yes, we offer scholarships for high school seniors through doctoral students. So we invite students, once they register, to update their portfolio, their profile, on an annual basis. They'll need to submit the required documents. Some of our applications, many of them, require that a student needs a reference. And oftentimes that's where you come in, where individuals are reaching out to you, asking you to write a reference in support of their scholarship application. And reference and recommendation form, those can be interchangeable. We want to make sure if you are serving as a reference for an individual that you're really speaking to the program objectives, not reiterating what's on the student's transcript. We really encourage the students when they're looking at the essays, and I know essays can be a dirty word to a student sometimes, and that can cause them to procrastinate. But I want to give you some tips that you can share with them that would help mitigate that or dispel that myth about essays. First, in the essays, we're asking them really just to answer the questions. If it's a 3-part question, to answer all 3 parts. Secondly, we are asking that the students really ensure that they are telling their story in essays, and their story is different from their neighbor's story. And here's a quick tip around essays. I encourage students to create an online portfolio that has several headings. An example would be perseverance for a heading, overcoming challenges, community service, leadership, career interest, and to craft an essay around each of those topics so that when they're applying for scholarships, if a scholarship is asking about leadership, they go to their online portfolio, take the essay they drafted, pause, edit it to ensure that it addresses that particular question for the scholarship they're applying for. And once they edit it, they're going to take that, save it, and put it in the portfolio. Now there's 2 under leadership. These are small tips that will really help students to demystify the essay process, because they're going to be doing this not just as high school seniors, but all the way through college. So they also have an opportunity and winning application to use impact statements to talk about their leadership, about the activities they're engaged in, versus just listing them. So for example, if they were serving at a homeless shelter before COVID probably, then they could talk about the number of people they served. But really now in this COVID time, they have an opportunity to create leadership opportunities. If an athlete let's say is interested in football, they could do a virtual training for younger students, or someone interested in dance or loves computers. They could create their own leadership activities. And these are all helpful tips for them in having a strong application. Now, the last point before I move on is students should demonstrate a realistic self-appraisal. And what I mean by that is if a student is writing in the essay, oh, I have always wanted to be a doctor. That has been my dream. And in another essay, they say, I hate science. That, I can't wait till I don't have to take any more science classes. We know that's an unrealistic self-appraisal. So that's what I mean by that particular statement. So these are just some key tips. And during the Q&A, we can talk more about tips for a winning application. Here's some best practices that you may want to employ in your area. Encourage your seniors to register on uncf.org/scholarships every year. Have them register at the beginning so as opportunities open up, we can push the scholarships out to them. Consider sponsoring a UNCF Empower Me tour. Now, this is a traveling college readiness tour. Now, I know we've had one in the LA area a couple of years ago. And what this tour does is it brings together high school students along with HBCUs, particularly our member institutions. They do admittance on site in some cases. They do provide applications in other cases. They have an opportunity to apply for scholarships at the Empower Me Tour, and there are workshops to help the students, one, understand HBCUs, two, to actually apply for opportunities at our HBCUs, and there are parent workshops that are associated with the Empower Me Tour. So this is a great opportunity. Now in this virtual world, it can be a statewide event. We just finished a Empower Me Tour for the states of Illinois and Wisconsin. A great opportunity to introduce your students to historically Black colleges and universities, workshops around college readiness, and an opportunity to actually apply for opportunities. And then you can share the resources that we're going to provide to you during this session. We wanted to make sure that we leave you with tools, and Sekou will talk about some of those tools as we move forward. And we do have 2 local offices on the West Coast, one in San Francisco and one in Los Angeles. So you can also stay connected. So these are just a few of the best practices that you may want to employ.
Of course. The perils of working from home. Let's see if I can get my 4-legged associate to settle down. So thanks, Mary. And I think that someone's going to take care of the dog in a second. I think one of the things that I wanted to circle back to that I mentioned earlier was what we know about African-American students' academic and career aspirations. So we did some research several years ago and have followed it up with African-American parents. And then we followed up with research we actually did with a cohort of students of color in high school. And we found overwhelmingly that African-American youth and their parents see going to college and get a 4-year degree as their academic ambition for themselves, and they run into a lot of obstacles along the way. But I think it's important to know that we've seen this, and we did a larger study with African-American Latino students several years ago that mirrors the same thing, that students overwhelmingly view college as an opportunity to unlock future possibilities for themselves and to tap into their potential. And they really want to go and, are looking for ways and support to get them there. And I think it's important for everyone to know, and I'm sure that many of you all have seen this in your work, that oftentimes the challenges are that communities and organizations around students aren't reinforcing what the students want for themselves. I think it's really important to know that we've sort of objectively seen this, that this is what students and families want And I think it's incumbent on all of us to help support that. Now, that said, as you all no doubt know, um, there are a lot of barriers that students and families run into, and that is clearly what causes a lot of the behaviors late in their academic career that prevent them. We move to the next slide, Mary. Um, from actually accessing their college going dreams. And you can see from this graphic, students list a lot of things, but the biggest one is the cost of college. I mean, they just, it's expensive. It's expensive relative oftentimes to the household income that many young people are coming from, and a lack of both, overall income and, frankly, and this is true across demographic groups, like a lack of understanding and appreciation for how college financing can work, and appropriate uses of the mix of how you finance a college degree really makes it hard. I mean, I think that unfortunately, as a nation, we have a lot of work to do around overall financial literacy, and this hurts certainly our lower income and our Black and Brown communities even worse. But you also see that, followed up closely by the high cost of college is that our barriers that students talk about that, oftentimes late in their academic careers are things that clip them, right? They don't know how to manage the testing regime they need to in order to finish their applications, and the cost gets them into how to pay for it. And there's a lot of horror stories around debt. I mean, I think unfortunately the thing that we're not pushing hard enough on is most analysis, and you all would know this, around the value of a college degree say overwhelmingly college is worth it. Making the right financial choices around how to afford it, and what the college is, what the right college price is for you is important. But college is certainly worth it for most people. And I think we have to help reinforce that message with many more students. So to that end, we engaged in a conversation at this event last year and came away thinking that there could be some resources we could help provide you all. So we've got a new HBCU resource guide, actually literally hot off the presses today. So we're going to include this guide in the materials from this session. I know there's a question about the deck. The deck will also be in the folder that's available to you all, and I think will be emailed out to you all at sometime next week. So you will get the deck. You'll also get a copy of the resource guide and another resource that we wanted you all to have to use to help you, learn more about resources that are out there, but also to learn about HBCUs, the opportunities they offer to students, and ways to help students learn more about, how an HBCU may or may not be right for them. I think an important thing, which is true, is that some of the myths around HBCUs, I mean, they are fairly diverse institutions. And I would say in particular, in a state like Texas, HBCUs look much more like the demographics of the state of Texas. I mean, there is a high number of the predominant student population in HBCUs in the state of Texas are overwhelmingly Black and Latino. And they do tend to mirror the demographics across the state, I think, pretty well. So this HBCU resource guide will hopefully provide some good resources to you all, and we'd love to hear any feedback people have after using it for a year, and we'll do a new iteration next year. It will also be available on our website soon, but we'll get you an electronic copy shortly after this so that you have access to this. We've also got a couple other things that we wanted you all to know about. As Mary mentioned earlier, certainly the scholarship site is important. And I would reiterate, getting young people who think there might be an opportunity for them and are looking to learn more about scholarships to log into the website. If for no other reason, I've logged in myself, and in the search process young people go to, it's helpful to have the site will actually email them opportunities as they become available. And so I think that's a helpful resource for them as well. And, as Mary well knows, because there are new opportunities arriving on an almost daily basis, I mean, oftentimes we're responding to donor interests. We're standing up new scholarship programs all the time for all kinds of students with all kinds of interests and needs. So I think it's hugely important for young people to know where some of the pools of resources are, I would also just throw a quick mention in here. In addition to scholarships, we obviously do a lot of internship work that's designed to help young people in college put themselves on a path to early career success through paid internships with a number of partners we work with around the country. And we're building our internship work as well on a daily basis. There are lots of opportunities there. And we are continuing to deploy young people during the summer in internships, hundreds of them at a time each year. And we think that's a hugely beneficial, both financially for young people, but also to help build their career prospects. So just want to let you all know that there are those resources for you. And now we're going to pivot to questions. I guess we can jump. I could see in the chat from Linda McGee. I think, Mary, this is a question for you. Is that weighted or unweighted for a GPA?
If it doesn't state, you can use either, unless it states that weighted or unweighted. Yeah.
And then I see it, and feel free, anyone else, to put other questions in the chat. I'm going to read through and respond to some of the ones that are here right now. I see there's a question from, I think it's Brooke Purvis, about, are these scholarships only for documented US citizens then? It's an interesting question. I can tell you this right now, because I've been engaged with a couple of donors this year where this was a real area of need, in particular around response to CARES Act, when there was a flood of federal money to support students, and undocumented students were missed in a big way. So we have had new pools of funds arrive in, actually for the specifically designed to meet the needs of and be for students who are not eligible for CARES Act or other related federal funds. So we do have those. I think we'll continue to see more of those as the needs of undocumented students continue to become more prevalent. I think the economic downturn actually makes that much more challenging. So we do have some funds that are available for undocumented students or students who are not eligible for CARES Act funds. Mary, anything to add on that?
No, I think that's, so I think the majority are for students who are US citizens or permanent residents. And I mentioned, at our 37 member institutions, we've had some emergency funds just for those institutions, and they are open to students who are undocumented as well. So yeah, we are trying to move toward having more to support them.
Yeah, and I see there was a follow-up question about, will the slides be available? And I think Mariana responded, for those who aren't looking in the chat, that the slides will be available, as well as the resources we share here. So both the checklist and the resource guide will also be made available to everyone after today's session as well, so that you've got those resources for you. I also wanted to add, I realized as we were talking through this, there's an interesting opportunity. Some of you all may be aware of, some of you not, that the state of California, actually the community college system, has a pathway for young people to matriculate directly from community colleges in California. Has articulation agreements with about 40 HBCUs designed to help young people attending one of the community colleges in California attend one of a number of HBCUs. So I'm going to actually drop a quick note about that in the chat, along with the link for everybody in case they want that. And that's actually in the notes in one of our slides, so you'll see that as well. So I'll just put that in here for folks. I think, that portal of transfer is a good thing to know about. And it allows for, obviously, articulation for students to travel with all the credits they've earned from 2-year institutions over to a 4-year institution, a number of public and private HBCUs around the country. It's helpful to know.
That's good. The tips that we share that you can employ in your high schools and the districts of linking individuals to the UNCF site. And I looked at some of the numbers in the state of California for the last few years of students that applying for scholarships on uncf.org, and it was like 449. And that's a small number when you probably think of the high school senior population. So that just tells us that there's more opportunity for individuals to really be engaged with the UNCF opportunities and to apply for them. So 449 was the number of the last few years that just applied. So we are hoping that this session will encourage you to share with your students uncf.org/scholarship so that they can take advantage of what we have to offer as well. Any other questions that you see in the chat? So while we're waiting for another question, and I can't see the chat from here, but I always share with individuals about being references. I know many of you may be asked to be a recommender or reference for a student. We encourage students to ask the question of a reference, can you write a positive recommendation for me? Really important. So as you are working with them in college readiness, share that question. Don't just ask anyone to be a reference, but can you write a positive recommendation? And encourage them to reach out to their recommenders as soon as they know they're going to apply for opportunities, so that the recommenders have as much time as possible to complete their recommendation for the student's behalf.
Yeah.
I tell you, I'm excited about the resources this year. Last year when we came, we had a lot of questions about HBCUs and how do you share information with students? And we need to know more about HBCUs is the statement that we received. So this HBCU resource guide is going to be key and hopefully very beneficial for you to really talk with students about historically Black colleges and universities and give you the tools that you need to share.
And Mary, I see a question from Sandra about, can you repeat the UNCF info? Sandra, can you clarify what info you're looking for?
If you're our link.
Oh, yes, it's uncf.org. I'm sorry. Yeah, the website.
Yeah, uncf.org/scholarships gets you directly to the scholarship page. And again, I mentioned that the scholarships for high school students are basically going to be posted in January. Now, while you may be working with high school students, I'm sure many of your alum are still reaching out to you about opportunities. So remember, UNCF has scholarships for high school seniors through college students, through doctoral students. And we have internships for college students. And Sekou talked about the many internships, paid internship opportunities that we have for students to help build their resume and to help them identify potential careers. So for college students, we have a host of paid internship opportunities. And for high school through doctoral students, we do have scholarships that are available.
Yeah, and I see, I think a great question here from Linda. I'll just read it out loud so everybody can hear. I've always had kids who want to go to HBCUs, but the schools never meet their full need. They end up at PWIs that can pay for them, but they miss out. You know, how can more money be made available? Only my top students get enough to go, but they're offered full rides at PWI. It's hard for them to say no, but they really miss the relationship building. Yeah, I mean, I think that's, it's an important question. So I think there are a few things on, what can be done to make more money available. I'm to be perfectly frank, I think that a lot of what the country is going through this year, we've seen sort of increased interest, including from donors around how to make HBCUs more accessible financially to more students. I think there's a greater appreciation and awareness now than we've had in a long time about the value add HBCUs have for young people. I know some of you all may have seen the news earlier this year of a couple of significant financial commitments that Reed Hastings, founder of Netflix, and his wife Patty Quillen made to UNCF and to Spelman and Morehouse. And part of their rationale after actually visiting a few of our schools was that they were really struck by the degree to which they could appreciate from hearing directly from students how important the experience was for building, identity development for the young people and how they really needed to have spaces like that for it to happen. I think that's something that's been lost on a lot of people for a long time. And so part of this is the advocacy around helping more people realize the value add there. Part of it is, what are the policy levers we can pull? I live in DC, and we've got a tuition assistance program that supports students at a number of institutions, and private HBCUs are one of the places where funds we have in our tuition assistance grant can help. So I think looking at policy levers, I think, to be honest with you, that what California does through their transfer arrangement with HBCUs is hugely important because it can make many schools much more financially available to young people. I also think that we've got to have sort of longer, more substantive conversation with families and communities about picking the right school for a young person. There's a lot of talk about, good school, and there's a lot of talk about, well, I can go to school for next to nothing. Shouldn't I do that? And I think, all of us make decisions all the time about paying for things that are available at almost free because there's a value there. And I think, we all have to take on some responsibility for helping make the value case. And then also, around the HBCU experience, there actually, I would argue, and Mary, they're right, there are a variety of price points with across, even across private HBCUs. I think there's a variety of price points of schools. And I think sometimes young people need to know that better. I know that there's a lot of work to be done on how to help families and children apply to school, a diverse set of schools where they'll end up with a diverse set of potential cost spectrums that help them make a decision. But if you apply to all the same kinds of schools, it can be hard to make, comparison shop around price. But Mary, you had something to add there?
Yeah, I did want to add to that, Linda. Thank you so much for that question, because that's real. And we know that. My son went to HBCU and he graduated debt free. But it started with those conversations as a senior in high school and putting together a plan to apply on a regular basis and to instill that process of, yeah, you're not going to be able to maybe make enough money or earn enough for the full year at first, but you're going to be applying to opportunities through all organizations. UNCF is one, community organizations that offer scholarships, churches in your area, fraternities, sororities. So we usually we talk with students about accessing every opportunity to secure funds for college and to make this a part of their fabric, to apply on an ongoing basis. Because once students are in college, they're going to be doing the same thing. They're going to be applying on an ongoing basis to ensure that they advantage themselves of all of the funding that's available there.
Yeah, and I see that it's Anita or Nada asked a question about PBIs. PBIs are not included in our member network of member institutions. We do have a few PBIs that we are engaged with and supporting through our Career Pathways initiative. So I'm actually dropping the link to the Career Pathways CPI initiative in the chat. So you could share with students some of the other schools that we work with that are outside of our member network. The Career Pathways initiative is all about helping, obviously, institutions build career pathways so that young people graduate from college on a path to a career. And there's been a lot of talk about young people who graduate from college and then all of a sudden they're not sure or ready for what's next. And so this initiative has been huge on helping schools really rethink how that works and graduating young people really ready for work after graduation. And I see Kimberly Taylor mentioned that they offer HBCU fairs each year. I know a number of districts do that. Mary and I are actually going to be speaking at a district in Virginia next week that's hosting an HBCU fair for their students that I think it's, again, hugely important. And what would you suggest is the best way to help students research HBCUs and find the right fit? Mary, what do you think about that?
Well, I think there's a couple ways to do so. I think this HBCU resource guide is going to be a good tool for you. to really help students think about that. And they can identify many of the HBCUs that exist, and then look at what they offer, and to go to those sites. And Kimberly mentioned the HBCU fair, to talk to each of the schools to see what they offer, because we know the key is to determine or understand what the students are interested in. You know, they may not necessarily know the major, what they want to major in, but they do know what activities they like to engage in, what they're interested in, and that can help them to choose the right school so that it has multiple majors for them to select from. So the HBCU guide is one, of course, visiting the schools virtually is one, going to HBCU fairs. And I do want to highlight that, again, the scholarships offered through UNCF are not just at our 37 member institutions or just at HBCUs. Students can use the funds for institutions, any four-year accredited university or college. We want to share the information about historically Black colleges and universities because we know the positive impact that it's had on students. And we share the research associated with that. And there's more research on our website. There's a document on our uncf.org website called Student Speaks, and it gives a perspective from students attending historically Black colleges and universities. And that's another tool that you may want to share with students so they can hear from a perspective of an individual student who has attended HBCUs.
Yeah, I think that's right, Mary. And the other thing I would add to that is, oops, I'm sorry. That I'm going to drop in the chat here in a minute. There's also, I mean, I've got to plug Mary, your team and your work. We've got actually a whole set of resources on the outreach page on our website. So I'll drop that link into the chat here. Great place to learn, in particular about UNCF member colleges and institutions. And I dropped a note in earlier. You know, we'd love to hear from anyone in via any format. Our emails are in this deck. You know, what are the other kinds of tools, formats, or ways in which it'd be helpful to get information about HBCUs to students? Obviously, that's one of the challenges we're always trying to solve for, is how do we get the information to students? So any insights or perspectives you all have on ways and formats, layouts that could help students get their questions answered and help get resources about HBCUs, we'd love to be a partner and figure out how to get more of that to them.
Absolutely. And if you have alum from your institutions who have attended HBCUs, reach out to them, you know, have them come back or participate in one of your virtual events to talk to the students. That's always a great way to hear from a near age peer about HBCU.
Yeah, and I just dropped the outreach link into the chat. Student Speaks video.
We offer so many resources on the UNCF website. And again, this year we wanted to make sure that we left you with more tools, and that HBCU resource guide, I know I've mentioned that a couple of times, and that really it comes out of conversations that we've had with you in prior years, saying we want a tool that we can help share information about historically Black colleges and universities with students. And we think that's going to be a great resource for you.
Oops, just something happened, I missed it. Okay. Yeah, any other questions?
And again, we listed some best practices in the document that you may want to employ by ensuring that the link for UNCF is on your school site as well as on your district site so that students can access it. Have a day in the senior year that you have all of your students register. It would only take about 15 minutes or so to register on uncf.org. And that would be a great assist. So we become one of the sources for them in seeking funding. And by doing so, when they enter college, they're going to continue to update their information so that they have access to the paid internship opportunities that are offered, as well as the other scholarships that are offered on an annual basis. This is not a one-time process. And I know we're preaching to the choir now that this is something that students will do on an annual basis.
Let's see here. Okay. Yeah, Yadira, and actually, Yadira's got a question about who to reach out to. We've actually got, Mary, you want to flip to the next slide? Our contact information is on the next page. So once again, you all will get the deck, but in case you want to get this down to be able to contact one of us, feel free. We are happy to engage in a conversation or participate in an event or activity that you all may have coming up that would be helpful to you. As Mary mentioned earlier, like we've learned a lot in a number of conferences and sessions that we participated in over the years. And so we're just looking to respond to needs that people have identified and provide as many resources as possible. I mean, obviously, financing college is a huge piece of this, but there's a lot about helping students make the right decision around what's the right choice and fit for them. So we're always looking to find ways to do that. Mary, you got anything else?
Well, I think we pretty much covered it. I always reiterate uncf.org. To find more information, uncf.org/scholarships to go directly to the page. Encourage students to create a profile and register on UNCF so that we can send them information as it becomes available. Again, if you are looking at the site now, you're not going to see many opportunities for high school seniors, but starting in late December and through January, that's when many of the scholarships will be posted for high school seniors. And again, you have alum that are coming back to you and asking you questions about opportunities. You may have children who are in college, so it becomes a resource that you may want to utilize as well and share in your community.
Excellent. So I think that we are right within our time. Mariana, are there any other parting details that we need to give to all of our participants?
So we are almost out of time. And to end the session, I wanted to thank Ms. Mary Williams and Sekou Biddle for sharing their expertise with our wonderful participants. So please know that all of the recordings, the PowerPoints, and the handouts will be made available within the next week. And an email will be sent out from CSAC when it is ready with directions on how to access that. Please remember to leave any feedback so we can continue to provide you with the support that you need. And if you wanted to hashtag CA College Affordability on any social media, we will put those in our PowerPoint as well. I hope everyone has a great day. And that is it for this Zoom session. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Have a great day.